Did he go for he went for a world record, right? Or he,
I'm just trying to find it. He
yeah, I can't even remember where I saw that, but I saw that and I was like, whoa, I must send that to Colm.
he's a teenager, so he's 16 and he benched 238 kgs or 525 pounds.
At 16 years old?
Yeah.
At what body weight?
Let's see. They posted it actually on the barbing thing.
Like
Damn.
he looks like a big dude, but he's not, a like that. He's not built like that dude benching 800 or anything.
That's crazy, dude. Well, all right.
Yeah,
Well, we're live.
But also, I've never seen
the LBEB Big Show. Carry on, Leaf.
I've never seen a 16-year-old with such a big beard.
I just posted
I
it
don't
on the
know.
chat.
Maybe it's like a genetic thing or whatever, but yeah. That's quite
Interesting.
a hairy 16-year-old.
Oh, okay. Posted on Barbie. Damn. Americans, eh?
It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that is crazy. That's 16. That dude's massive, though, for 16 years old. Anyways.
That's what I'm saying.
So the topic today, we're going to talk about triceps, and we're talking how to get absolutely massive horseshoe anacondas on the back of your arms. And as usual, we have our co-hosts. We've got myself. We've got Colin Wolf, 2 times world's strongest man competitor, New Zealand's strongest man, a bunch of other achievements in there. Same with Mona DeLacy here, Commonwealth medalist in Olympic weightlifting, 6 times karate world champion, Commonwealth CrossFit Games athlete, and much more under her name as well. So we've got a wealth of expertise to share on building the triceps. I just watched that guy's bench. Damn, that dude is a beast. 525 pounds at 16 years old. And he must be like 100 kilo body weight, probably.
So you should have some beast triceps then.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's posted on Breaking Muscle, I see. So did you know Barbend actually owns Breaking Muscle? They acquired them in 2021, just for your information, for anyone listening as well, if that interests you. But we are talking triceps, and I love training triceps. It's probably one of my favorite muscle groups to train because they get so pumped and they grow so well from just doing a shit ton of work on them. Before we share some of our favorite stuff, I'll go to you, Colin, first. But before we do that, a little bit of the anatomy, just so we get an idea of what we're trying to do when we train triceps. So triceps, it's called triceps because it's 3 muscle heads. You have a lateral head, a long head, and a medial head. So interestingly, if you've got the medial and lateral head, so lateral head is that big one that sticks out the side of the arm here, the meat, and the medial is closer to the elbow. Those are purely elbow extensors. So essentially anything that straightens the arm will target the triceps, and specifically those 2. And then you have the long head of the tricep. And the long head runs up somewhat the inside of the tricep here, but it crosses the elbow and the shoulder. So the long head doesn't just extend the elbow, it also extends the shoulder. So it has 2 functions, and it's similar to the hamstring. The hamstrings have 2 functions because it crosses the hip and the knee. So, and then same thing with the rectus femoris and the quads, that crosses the hip and the knee as well. And then the biceps brachii also cross the shoulder and the elbow. So there's a few muscles in the body that have this unique feature being biarticular, meaning they cross 2 joints. And why that's important is because typically biarticular muscles, they grow massively when they're put under huge stretch, under load. And that's the major advantage when you're training these muscles. If you're able to load them under massive stretch, that's when you get the big growth. But obviously we have a lot of experiences to share within training triceps. So Colm, your go-tos when you're training triceps, top tips, top exercises, favorite exercises, anything like that.
So my favorite overall, like if I had to choose one, probably some kind of dip variation. I'm a fan of pretty much all dip variations. But something I learned, so I have ruptured the long head of my triceps, and I did that doing the log press in competition and had to get surgery to repair it. And something that I felt that I neglected leading up to that injury, basically all my training for triceps was just pressing. All I did was pressing. So now triceps are also one of my favorite muscle groups to train as well, like same as you, James. But
They make your sleeves tight.
Yeah, I as a general rule, I like to start with some kind of compound and then move on to some kind of exercise with a bigger stretch component, and then like an easy isolation one just to get a massive pump at the end. So something that might look like like my compounds I tend to use as normally some kind of close grip bench with a full range of motion. I do recommend partials, but more for strength. For size, I wouldn't really recommend them, lockouts and that sort of thing. But like close grip bench, dips, whether it's parallel bar dips or the bench dips, I'm a big fan of both versions. And JM press that they do in powerlifting, I actually quite like that one as well. So I will tend to do, like, what I'd recommend is somewhere between like 5 to 10 reps and those sorts of exercises, then moving on to something with quite a big stretch component. So like an overhead, like a dumbbell skull crusher like this, I like cable versions, single arm, double arm. Honestly, all of them are fantastic. But like James was mentioning, if you can feel that nice big stretch in the tricep, we've already done some nice heavy load. Now we're moving into stuff we can feel that big stretch, but still use a decent load. It doesn't have to be super heavy. And then I like to finish off with something. Normally, sometimes it's even just a band. While it's not going to, for this final one, so rep range wise, something like 5 to 10 reps in that first exercise, maybe 8 to 12 or 8 to 15 on that second exercise. And then the final one, I like to go anywhere from like 15 plus. And I do this because anecdotally, it makes my elbows feel fantastic after, to be honest. Clients who are training a lot of strongmen or powerlifters, elbows tend to get beaten up. If we can get lots of blood into the area, it just feels nice and you get a massive pump. So things like that, like band pushdowns, cable pushdowns, any kind of pushdowns, kickbacks, honestly, they're all pretty much all of them are great. And like we were saying last week with squats and like growing the glutes, a big range of motion on these exercises I would always recommend. So taking advantage of that full stretch. You don't want to do this sort of thing where you're not even taking advantage of the stretch. You want to go all the way down. But yeah, those would be my favorites. If I had to choose one, I'm just a big fan of the parallel bar dips. You can get provided you've got no injuries, you can get a nice big range of motion. You can load it, and it hits other areas as well.
Have you ever come across people that can't dip? Like myself, I haven't been able to do dips since the very beginning. I get the sternum pain that literally stays there. Like I literally can't do dips. I've tried to progress different ways to do dips, and I haven't done them ever since. I just can't do them anymore.
Yeah, I've got a couple clients, one is shoulder issues, but otherwise that sternum issue as well. So if people listening aren't sure, I've had it at one stage where it feels like there's a ton of pressure going down onto your sternum as you're dipping. Is that how it feels for you?
Mine doesn't just happen during the dip. So I could dip, and then afterwards it literally stays there for months. Okay. And it's painful when I do like any pressing and stuff like that.
For my clients who can't do them, I just don't do them. Nice and simple. Go with an exercise you can do. But one other variation I actually am a big fan of is that I don't see used all the time is rolling extensions. So have you seen
Mona's favorite?
I was going to mention that. I'm actually doing it in my program right now.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm a big fan of those. I find you can get a nice stretch. It's kind of a nice mix between, if you're doing a super strict extension, sometimes you can't use the biggest load. The rolling kind of allows you to use a little bit more load. And if you're doing one in the right angle, so lying back or on an incline, you can get a nice stretch in the long head, and there's a little bit of shoulder extension, like James was mentioning before. But yeah, that's one I don't see used all the time that I'm also a fan of. So pretty interesting that you're also a fan of it. But yeah, those are my main. That would be like a nice base, and I would also recommend training them twice a week, at least.
Yeah, we use the rolling tricep extension a lot, Leaf, and you're using it now. But before you jump into that as well, you obviously with weightlifting, you see some of the Chinese often doing bodybuilding accessories for the triceps too. So there's obviously some importance there within weightlifting.
Yes, but before we jump into that, I wanted to say with like the rolling tricep extension, I think one of the thing is, I think a lot of people just don't know how to do it. I think it's one of
Yeah.
those things where like they see people doing it and then they're like, whoa, this looks easy. And when they try it, because it takes a few tries, like you have to do it a bit to get the rhythm, to do it properly. And then once you've got it, it's like one of those super fun exercises, but then that really burns the triceps as well. Um, and then also what James was mentioning about, especially like in the Chinese weightlifting team, and I think it's specifically talking about them. It's because, you know, if you go on YouTube, like especially back in the day, and you would see like the Chinese weightlifting team train and like things that was posted like on Who Grip or things like with Lu Jiajun and that kind of stuff, like a lot of them train a lot of bodybuilding movements, and especially when it comes to dips or weighted dips, and they are really impressive with those kind of movements as well. And you will also see a lot of them do, even on like parallel bars and things like that, they will do handstand push-ups, because obviously with the jerk movement is like that. So you'll see a lot of them actually do the movement very similar to how they would then do the jerk. And the other thing is as well, and it's not just to get like strong triceps, but Colm, you made a good point earlier about, you know, just protecting the elbows, and you know those are like important joints. So yes, in weightlifting you go heavy all the time, very similar to strongman. So doing these accessories, and you don't have to necessarily do them very heavy, but just being able to do like quite a bit of rep, getting blood into the muscle, and that just helps protect the elbows. And like weightlifting, there is just Mia's just crying. I'm going to let you quickly just talk. I just want to quickly grab. I'll be back in a sec.
Yeah, no, Mona will be back talking about the weightlifting stuff. She's basically talking about, doing the high rep stuff with the lighter weights. It's just nice for the elbows to pump some blood in there, especially when you're doing a lot of heavy pressing as well. But when we talk tricep training as well, before Mona comes back, the shoulder position also affects essentially triceps activation. So when you're training your triceps, you want to train at essentially different arm elevations. So with the arms by your side, with your arms in front, with your arms overhead, all of those will target the triceps differently. So it's just important that when you're wanting to maximize triceps development, you want to have variation within your training. Whereas if you're just trying to get a strong squat or you're just trying to do whatever, you don't need as much variation. We don't have to have as much variation. But for the triceps, it's just one of those ones where you need the variation to really maximize. But Mona, do you want to carry on with what you were saying before?
Oh, yes. So when it comes to like training the triceps and stuff, especially in weightlifting, like you do so many heavy overhead movements. For example, you do the split jerk, which you'll go really heavy in, which is a very fast and dynamic movement. And yes, that also does work the triceps. But and then also things like snatches and, like things like overhead squats and all those kind of things. So by doing those movements, yes, you do work the triceps, but in actual fact, like the accessories and stuff that you do, that will just help the joints just stay healthy. And it will just make, it just makes everything feel better at the end of the day. And having obviously, or training the accessories then to obviously make those other movements stronger as well is very important. And like some of the exercises that I like doing when it comes to like triceps, or like Colm, you mentioned it, like the rolling tricep extension with the dumbbells. That's one of my favorites. And then I'm also now quite a big fan, and this is obviously if you have it available, but like cable tricep extensions or band tricep extensions. So you don't necessarily always need these machines and stuff to do it. Like if you have bands and you've got somewhere to tie the bands, like you can do these tricep exercises as well. Another thing that you'll often see weightlifters do is the plate tricep extension, very similar to the dumbbell tricep extension, but often athletes will just do it with a plate. Then what they will do is they will again just get a really nice stretch. So it's a really nice stretch as well. And then getting that extension and doing it very similar to where they would do the split jerk. So or where they would hold the jerk above their head, so it will be behind the ear. So instead of like keeping the elbows forward, you can kind of do it as a mobility exercise then as well. So yeah, in weightlifting, you want to try and do like all these exercises that you do to kind of mimic the jerk movement or even like the snatch movement. So you wanted to have that direct carryover to these movements in order to either protect the joints or make them stronger.
Before getting back to the podcast, I want to let you know that down in the description is a link to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground. And within that, you get access to all our training programs, online courses, and into our private Discord community, where all three of us are in there to help you with whatever it is with your training. Regarding the programs, we have Mona, who's done all of the weightlifting cycles. We have Colm, who's done the strongman off-season and strongman competition programs. Then we have all the hallmark Lift Big, Eat Big training programs, Pump Dragon, Flanks Method, and many more. And I've also added muscle building specialization programs within that and are continuing to update and add training programs into our app. You also get access to Mona's Weightlifting Mastery online course, and you get to join these calls live in the audience where you can ask members only question and answers at the end of each episode. So if that sounds like you, go down in the description. There's a link there to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground, and that'll give you access to everything I just mentioned. Yeah, and when Colm was talking about, or when actually Mona and Colm were talking about the full range of motion stuff, I mean, for example, the medial head of the tricep, the one close to the elbow, that only becomes fully involved when you start getting past a 90-degree angle of the elbow. So getting that deep stretch is going to maximally involve the triceps. If we look into some of the research surrounding, I guess, triceps exercises and growth, there was one recently that looked at triceps extensions versus overhead triceps extensions. So your typical tricep extension, your arms will be by your side as you push down like on a cable or a band, and then overhead would be arms overhead like holding a dumbbell. They did 5 sets of 10 for 12 weeks. And what they found was the overhead extension led to 1.5 greater triceps growth versus the cable triceps extension, basically the push down. Which is a big difference. And they found that in the long head and in the lateral head of the triceps. So that's kind of leading towards the idea that, hey, having that big stretch is a huge stimulus for the triceps. Now, I wouldn't take that data and then only do overhead extensions because it is, quote unquote, the best exercise. In my experience, it's not enough to grow your triceps significantly. For me, the close grip bench press is number one king for growing triceps. If you're not doing the close grip bench press, your triceps will never grow to the size that you want. You can do all the overhead extensions and push downs you want, but if you're not doing a heavy pressing like close grip bench, I don't believe you'll get the size that you want. I don't know if you've seen the same Colm around, kind of like a compound versus isolation with the triceps.
Yeah, I would say it's quite a common trap some people fall into with the triceps, because I've heard a lot of people say they don't necessarily feel the triceps working on their close grip. So whereas say like a rope push down, you can feel the triceps burning a lot.
Yeah.
So they avoid those compounds and just do a lot focusing on the burn. I think that's a mistake. While you can progress like that, it's going to be a lot slower than if you put that effort in doing those compounds first. And even if you don't necessarily like feel your triceps working super hard during the close grip, if you went from something like 3 sets of 10 at 60 kgs close grip bench, and then later on you're now doing 3 sets of 10 at 80, it's highly likely that you will have put on size on your triceps, even though you likely won't get that same localized burn in your triceps that you would doing tricep pushdowns. But those compounds allow you to move a heavy weight, and then you can still do those burning, like feeling exercises after. But like if you look at any sport that has, like, if you look at the top bench presses in the world, obviously bench press is a big compound exercise. Their triceps are massive. Strongman, like pressing overhead, triceps are massive. And what do they have in common? They do this big compound movement in their training.
So close grip bench for me, like you got to do that as part of your triceps training. Then after that's combination, you get your isolations. You can do heavy push downs. Regarding the close grip bench, though, I typically stick to sets of 8. 8 reps I've found is like the sweet spot for close grip bench. I don't know why, but 8 reps is like, 6 is too little, too heavy. 10 is kind of like too many, but 8 is like, I don't know, it's like the perfect sweet spot between load and reps for some reason, at least for hypertrophy, and that's what I've found. You can also do it on incline. I don't typically like the incline for closed grip bench for triceps specifically. I found you don't get the same. It just doesn't feel the same as doing it on the flat bench. So typically stick with the flat bench if you're doing closed grip for triceps. Then triceps push downs. Again, I mentioned about overhead being superior, but put the tricep push down after the closed grip bench feels really good, and you can load it heavy, and you can do. It's essentially like your heavy isolation of the day, because you can do overheads. You just can't do overheads to the same load, even though you're getting the stretch. So usually sets of like 10 to 15 on the push downs, and you can do that with any attachment you want with the rope. I find the rope I feel more in the outside of my tricep, the lateral, versus the push down I feel more in the meat of the tricep, however anecdotal that is. So that's just something to keep in mind. You'll probably find with different attachments you'll feel it differently within the triceps. And then you can finish with some kind of overhead within that session. Now, one exercise I really, really do like, and I credit for a lot of my triceps growth, is I think it's got a few names. It would be like a PJR pullover, or it would be called a lying triceps extension with extra range. So essentially like a skull crusher, but instead of just doing a skull crusher extension, you're going over and behind your head and getting a stretch, and then coming up like almost like a rolling extension, a mini rolling extension. So you're getting this huge stretch behind your head, and then the elbows come forward a little, and you're extending the triceps. And what I like about that is it's like a pseudo hybrid overhead extension. So you get the big stretch through the long head of the triceps, and even the other heads of the triceps through elbow extension. But you get heavier loading than you would when overhead, and it feels more comfortable than loading overhead. So that's what I've found works really well. And another thing you can do, so obviously we've covered like the compound stuff. We're pushing heavy bench, close grip benches, maybe heavy push downs. That's kind of like.
I want to ask Colm a
question
quickly, because this is one thing when you guys were talking about the close grip bench press, and I know this is one of those things where people question it a lot in weightlifting. Do you find that if you're coaching strongman athletes and they have mobility issues, do you tend to give them less of those movements, or do you just continue adding it to their program?
We, like for strongman, I kind of always try to include some kind of big compound like tricep movement. But if they've got mobility issues, we're going to be doing like other variations to work on that. But I also am a fan of some of these tricep exercises we've been talking about to help with the mobility. Like some of the strongmen are very tight, very tight. So just doing like some of them having the ability, if they're so tight they can only get to here, and now we can over time get them just doing a basic tricep extension. We get more range of motion, then like it's going to improve their rack position and that sort of thing. But yeah, in general, I would still include, I personally do still include a big compound tricep movement. Is that what you meant?
Yes. Because like in weightlifting, what we'll do is like, especially if the athletes are very stiff to like, because obviously with us as well, like if you can't get your arm behind your head, and you can't straighten your arms, then obviously like that will be like your first goal in order to make sure that like you can jerk properly. But in weightlifting, a lot of like bench presses and stuff like that doesn't get done, because if the athlete is already so stiff and they can't get in the overhead position, then we just you just scrap it all together, and you'll rather give them like other bodybuilding exercises or focus more on things like overhead movements, like your presses or your push presses, and those kind of things.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Those are good calls too. But we touched a lot on the compound stuff with some of the isolation. Those heavy compounds and even the heavy isolation stuff, that would be like, count that as your heavy, quote unquote, mechanical tension work. But there's some more advanced, I guess, ways you can also train your triceps. I like to incorporate often we can call them metabolite sets. I mean, it's just too fancy. Call them metabolite sets or whatever. But essentially, you're just getting the stupid sick pump. And you're just supersetting 2 triceps exercises together. So typically, my favorite superset that is probably the most painful is doing that PJR pullover or line triceps extension with extra range for heavy 10 to 15 reps, supersetting straight into decline close grip push-ups. And you're doing that for 10 to 20 reps. And you do 2 or 3 sets of that, and holy shit, like your sleeves don't fit anymore. And it is stupidly painful. It's probably one of the things that will grow your triceps massively. So if you, for example, in the context of, say, you're trying to smash triceps in a session, you did close grip bench for 3 sets of 8, even better, pause on the chest. And then you did 3 sets of triceps push downs for 10 to 15. And then you finished with the PJR pullover with the decline close grip push up for 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 15. That's a gnarly session for your triceps, and you'll feel that one. So that's one that's a superset that I really like, and one you can definitely use. Like those close grip push-ups, those decline ones are great for burning out the triceps after a different exercise. And there's actually old-time strongman's, like an old-time physical culture strongman circuit. I can't remember where I got it from. It wasn't from Dinosaur Training, but it was from a similar book. I think it was from a similar book. And it was all using towels. And it's a giant set, so it's 4 exercises, but it covers the biceps and the triceps. I mean, we talk about biceps next week, but this will include a little bit of that. So you would do, I think it was 10 barbell towel curls. So you have 2 towels on the barbell, and you do 10 curls, and then you go over to a dumbbell and you do 1 towel with a dumbbell. So it'll almost be like a towel hammer curl almost with 1 dumbbell for another 10 reps. And then you go to the cable and you do triceps extensions by using the towel as the handles. And you do, I think it was 10 to 15, and then you would finish with the close grip push up at the end of that. And I did that circuit like twice a week for a while, and that blew my arms up too. So that's a mean one. I should actually post a video of that at some point, but that one's super legit. So with arms, you can be pretty creative. You don't have to stick to one exercise, then another, then another. You can do a lot of circuits with them. You can do, I guess, supersets with them and really get the burn. Obviously, there's other more advanced things you can do, like blood flow restriction training. So for anyone who's not familiar with blood flow restriction, you're essentially wearing like a tourniquet around the top of your arms. So it could be like, I mean, the poor version is using like knee wraps or like, what do you call the voodoo floss bands? Yeah, all those around the top of your arms.
Yeah, voodoo floss.
Yeah. So that's like the poor version of it. That's what we typically use if we're going to do it. But you just got to be careful. You don't want to tie it too tight. If you tie it too tight, your arms might fall off. So you want to keep it like 4 or 5 out of 10 in terms of tightness. And then when you're doing your blood flow restriction training, it's not about load. It's just about stupid reps and being able to endure pain. And that's the hardest part. I did it the other day, and it was probably, I did 1 set and I took them off because I couldn't do any more. So I did 30 reps of band triceps with the things around my arms, and then I did 25 reps of band biceps, and I was like, okay, I'll rest like a minute, and then like, it was light. I'll rest a minute, and then I'll come back to it for the second set. And I just couldn't. It was just like the pump was way too painful. I don't know if you've played around with the blood flow restriction stuff, Colin.
Only a very tiny bit when I was rehabbing my tricep. But I didn't have proper cuffs, so I ended up giving up because it was just I was trying with knee wraps, I was trying with little bands, but I just couldn't do it. And training by myself,
fit your arms anyway.
Yeah. Well, this is when it was really atrophied, so it was pretty, especially my left was pretty skinny. But it was just a pain trying to set it up myself as well, training alone. But it's something I want to experiment with a little bit more. Mainly with other people because I know it sucks to do yourself.
Dude, doing 3, I don't know how people do it because it's one of those things where, okay, you wrap your arms up or whatever it is, and you're going to do 3 sets of 20, 30, 40 reps, but you don't get to take them off between the sets. So you're literally just building blood. So the whole idea of it is to reduce the outflow of blood from the muscles, for anyone listening. So one of the purported mechanisms of muscle growth is the idea of metabolite buildup, or the buildup of these waste products from energy production in the muscle, and that seems to signal muscle building response. And while mechanical tension is the key driver, this is just one that seems to work as well, and it's been shown to work, especially people in bed rest and things like that, and just doing like creating this hypoxic or non-oxygen environment. And it's often used within rehab. So within a professional sports setting, it's used often within rehab. So for example, if you had an ACL surgery or whatever, or as Colm mentioned with his triceps, you can't load it effectively to maintain the muscle mass, because it's going to be essentially immobilized for so long. You can't really load it. You'd lose muscle, slows down the recovery process. But if you can just start the blood flow restriction process, you can at least start stimulating muscle growth without the load. And so if you have an injured body part, you can do that. But we actually have a question here from the live chat from Gareth. What is the best tricep workout in your opinion? All right, Colm, give us your number one, your tricep workout that you'll prescribe someone who's just after massive triceps.
So I would go twice a week. Like I was saying before, I like to start off with either dips, close grip, or another big dips, close grip, or like a JM press or another big tricep extension type movement. And then I would go to something like, if I'm giving specifics, I'd say a cable overhead tricep extension single arm. And then I would finish with probably a rope pull down and repeat that twice a week. And then reps, I would go 5 to 10, but we could go 8s, like you were saying. You like the 8s on the close grip, which is fantastic. And then let's go 3 sets of 8 for the close grip. We'll go 3 sets of 10 on the overhead single arm tricep extension. And then on the final exercise, let's call it a tricep rope push down with 2 arms. I would go 15 plus reps, kind of like what you were saying before, James. I would just choose a weight that you're not even sure how many you can get, but we're just going to do as many as you can. Going to failure on that sort of thing as well is fine, because it's like you said, it's kind of pain tolerance opposed to like pure muscular failure, and it's not like it's a big compound movement. I would do that, and then another day I would do, depending on what else you're doing, like if you're a powerlifter and you've got heavy bench or whatever, you could have that as your second tricep day. But otherwise, I would do those same principles another day of the week, where you've got a big compound followed by some kind of a stretch move and then some kind of isolation, depending on the person. So that's what I would start with. Someone more advanced, potentially doing a little bit more volume. That would be my basic recommendation.
And he's asking, would you do any of those till failure?
So only the last one. So as well, I would go, say, the close grip bench, maybe 2 reps away from failure. Yeah. The overhead extensions, 1 rep away from failure. And then the tricep rope pull downs can go to failure. That way you're far enough away from failure and you can ensure that you can add load each week on that big compound. And then moving on to that overhead extension on the cable, it's a little bit more stable. We can push that a little bit closer to failure, but still keeping a rep in the tank. And then the final one, we're going to failure. That would be what I'd recommend.
Nice. Mona, you got one of your favorite tricep workouts?
Yeah, but I like the one that Colm gave, but actually one that I wanted to add or like a few exercises. Now I'm speaking more from like the athlete perspective as well, and especially coming from an athlete who competed in CrossFit. And again, if you are a beginner level athlete, then I wouldn't even attempt this movement, or I would attempt it with bands. But obviously if, a female comes to me and she's like, I've never done these movements, I want to also get stronger in them as well, then I would also recommend them doing things like box dips. So basically you can do this, on a bench or a chair. So if you're a mom like me and, you've got access to any of your furniture at home and you just want to get a quick workout in as well and get a nice tricep pump, you can definitely go and grab a piece of furniture, chair or something, and go and do a bunch of box dips there. Those are great also for the triceps. And then something else as well that I was just thinking of, and I haven't done this for ages just because we haven't had this piece of equipment available, is ring dips. And not just, ring dips by itself. But if you really want to like grow those triceps and you want a really nice pump, you will hook bands into the rings. And this is what we used to do in Romania as well, just before we left. And I used to, put a band from one part of the ring to the other part of the ring. I'd hook my knee on it, and you would just dip the crap out of your triceps. And I remember that being like really good, to get that tricep pump and getting my triceps stronger. And again, that's really good for weightlifting as well. But then also, it's a really nice progression that's going to help you to get things like your ring muscle ups, for example. Because if you want to get stronger in those movements as well, those are the kind of things that you have to be able to master before you can move over to doing things like your muscle ups or ring dips without bands. And another tricep exercise, it's like one of my favorites, is actually doing the ring push-ups. And again, this was something that we did before. And now it just makes me want to get a pair of rings, because I used to love those movements, just because it didn't just make me feel stronger or grow my triceps, but it made me feel athletic as well. And obviously, coming from an athlete perspective, that's something that is important to me, because I wanted to carry over to my sport as well. So I mean, again, if you don't have those pieces of equipment, you can do it with a bench. You can do push-ups or narrow grip push-ups, like you guys mentioned earlier. For women, if you are battling to do push-ups, you can do push-ups on your knees. I'm not necessarily a big fan of those, but you can also do them like on a bench. So have an incline, do your incline push-ups, and again, making sure those elbows are faced nice and in. That way I just get a lot more of a tricep pump. And then doing a whole bunch of exercises like single arm, dumbbell work that you can do, kickbacks, but doing a lot of reps. So with those kind of movements, if you want a pump, 1 to 5 reps is just not going to cut it. That's good for maybe strength building. Again, if you do things like muscle ups, etc. But if you really want to get like a really nice pump, I always work between like 8 and 12 or even 10 to 15 reps.
Yeah. And I think I've pretty much already shared my best triceps workout, which was the close grip bench for around 3 sets of 8. So this would actually, let me start this one again. For the beginner, probably shouldn't do what I mentioned if you're a ranked beginner. For a ranked beginner, you just can't really handle that kind of volume. Well, you can do that kind of volume, but it's not going to be very effective. You can get away with much less. So even just doing something like a close grip bench and then an overhead extension or that PGA pullover on one day, then the second day can be like an overhead press and then a triceps push down. That'll be more than enough. 3 sets of both, something like 8 to 10 or 6 to 10 on the compound exercise, and then 10 to 15 on the isolation exercise, and you'll be good to go. Then as you start to get a little more advanced, a little more stronger, then you can run through close grip bench, 3 sets of 8. Then you can do for me, I like to do the triceps push down after that. I like to finish on the stretch exercises. So triceps push down, 10 to 15, and then finishing with that kind of stretch supersetted with the decline push up. And that'll get you pretty almost good. Regarding the training split. So if you are prioritizing triceps development or just arm development generally, because typically you're not just trying to train the triceps, you're trying to train the arms together. But let's just say your triceps are your priority. Obviously, your training split is going to depend on your time you have available to train. So 3 times a week is typically going to be full body, but you can prioritize triceps. I would suggest 4 times a week where you can do like an upper lower split. So then you're definitely training your triceps twice on those upper body days. And if you need a third day, which you probably won't, then you can do some on your lower body day. You also have options to do 5-day splits. So it could be something simple like push, pull legs, upper, lower. So there you've got another 2 days of pushing within there if that fits. Or some people like to train 6 days a week, push, pull legs. Again, that offers you 2 opportunities to train the triceps within that. So if you're prioritizing triceps, then typically use variations that are going to hit the triceps better than normal. So if you're doing, say, a push day or upper body day or whatever, and instead of doing bench press, then use the close grip bench press, because then you're going to get your triceps development. You're still going to obviously develop the chest and shoulders with that, but you're going to prioritize triceps development if that is your goal within those things. Do you have any further advice there, Colin, regarding training splits if you want to prioritize the arms or triceps?
No, I agree with all that in terms of training frequency. And if you do a phase, like don't be afraid of not doing your wide grip bench press for a while. If you want to stick, like James was saying, if triceps are a priority and your main variation becomes close grip bench press and you increase that over time, highly, highly likely it's going to carry over to your bench press. Depending on like certain styles, maybe not so much, but those are very extreme styles, with a gigantic arch and whatnot. For most people, it's going to carry over nicely. The other thing I just wanted to mention, I get asked quite a lot, how close do you go for close grip bench? I personally, I'm curious of what you guys would say. My recommendation is normally start with hands just straight out in front of your shoulders like this. If that feels fine on both your wrists and your shoulders at the bottom, you can bring it in one hand width to this. So it's like one, see how my shoulder's here? It's one on the inside, provided it's okay on the shoulders and wrists. If that's no good, then I would stick with that. It doesn't mean this though. When I say close grip, it doesn't mean like that. But yeah, I'm curious. Oh, and also I would recommend having the elbows just tucked in that little bit, so you're not doing this sort of thing either. But I'm curious what you guys would say.
Yeah, for sure. It should be yeah, me.
Yeah,
it should be.
I was gonna say I like that too. Yeah, I like that too because what tends to happen is, especially with me, and I think that's just from my years of doing weightlifting, like your elbows and stuff take a beating. So I honestly feel like when I go narrower than that, then like so narrow where you were mentioning like that, it starts to like put a bit more pressure on my elbows. So yeah, again, but if I recommend it to someone else, I would do exactly the same as you. I would, but yeah, I'm gonna put I think James can continue that. Mia is being very verbal today on our podcast.
Yeah, so definitely with the close grip. So I basically have hands straight out in front, so it's like almost like one finger from the end of the knurling, and that just keeps my arm straight. And obviously elbows go past the ribs. I don't usually go hands inside at all. I don't think you need to go any closer than like literally just outside shoulder width. You'll still smash the triceps. Yeah, don't, as Colin was showing, don't put your hands in the middle. That makes no sense at all, and you'll just fuck your wrists up. And there's no knurling there either to hold on to, and you can't load it as heavy. So you're literally just shooting yourself in the foot 3 times by doing that variation instead of having it out just outside shoulder width. So play around with that as well. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I still see people do that in the commercial gyms. You'll see them with the hands right in. But yeah, you can't load it too hard on the wrists.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have a bench at home, one thing you can do is you can use the floor press for triceps. And I don't know if you're a fan of the floor press, Colin, but it's a nice triceps movement. Obviously, it shortens the range, but you can overload the triceps pretty well on it. Obviously, the big mistake people make is bouncing the arms off the floor. If you're going to do a floor press, pause with your arms flat on the floor before pressing. But is that something that you use often at all?
I do actually use these partial range of motions quite a bit, like board press, floor press, like pressing out of the rack and that sort of thing, but all more so for the strength focus to transfer to strongman.
Yeah.
Not so much size, but I have had people train at home over COVID as well with doing, like, if that's what you've got access to, it's still a fantastic exercise, the floor press. But like James said, you gotta, like, I would do that little pause on the bottom. I've seen people at the gym as well, like bouncing off of the floor, and then asking me like, how come I can floor press so much more than I can bench press? But it's because you're actually just bouncing it off the ground, and it's not accomplishing what you want it to accomplish.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's just something to be aware of if you're doing the floor press there. Same thing. Is there a foot position that you like? I typically have my legs fully out straight. Some people have their feet on the ground, but I feel like that encourages you to potentially push with your legs and have your hips off the floor as you floor press.
Yeah, I normally just say go with what's comfortable. If it's like, again, it's because some of the people I train have very varying body shapes. Like a super heavyweight strongman with big glutes can like lie on the ground. Like it just feels different. So
Yeah.
myself as well, having like when I was that weight, just so many things would end up being a position I was comfortable in. But yeah, those, I think that's a good start. What you said, because you don't want to turn it into you don't want to drive through your feet and like start bringing your hips up. It's not going to add anything to your triceps.
Yeah, you're just going to be able to push more with your legs. I mean, leg drive's important for the bench, obviously. But when we're talking about triceps as well, obviously we can strengthen the triceps, which can potentially help us grow and build the triceps, because obviously the stronger our triceps are, the more weight we can lift when we're doing some of our things like our higher rep isolation exercises. And one of the ones that I really, 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 really like is the fat grip, close grip bench off the pins. That is like my number one favorite exercise of all time. And if I had a rack here at the house, I would be doing that twice a week, because it's literally like it's the best exercise for bench ever. And I found that strength in the. What's that?
I think that's motivation now for us to really get a rack or a rig, because then I can have my rings and you can do your fat grip stuff. Then we both win.
Exactly. So if any sponsors are listening to this, send us a rack, please. But the off the pins is brutal. So we actually talked about this in the squat episode. We talked about squatting off the pins from the bottom position. Obviously taken from the book Dinosaur Training. This is also taken from the book Dinosaur Training. But when you do it with the fat grips, it's a whole nother level. When you're doing it from the pins right off your chest, the raw strength it takes to be able to press that bar is like another level. And if you can press it close grip from the pins with fat grips, you can close grip bench it without the fat grips normally. So I get my favorite set rep scheme for that, like it is for the overhead press, is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, working up to a heavy single. I think I've done 115 or 120 off the pins with the fat grips before, that when I was at my strongest pressing wise. And I don't think there's when you're using that along with close grip bench, that's a solid one. So even if you wanted a more advanced triceps workout, so the workout I already mentioned before, you would just slot this in after the close grip bench and then carry on as usual. So it'll be an extra exercise. So you literally do your close grip bench, your 3 sets of 8. Then you'll do this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 off the pins, and then you'll go into your isolation stuff. And that is brutal. That will make you stupidly strong, and it will add some meat to your triceps as well. I don't know if you play around much with off the pin lifting, Colm, with tricep stuff. Maybe I think you like the board press as well, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of depends what the client has access to. But yeah, honestly, I like all those variations. Anything where you're having to start from a dead stop, I think is just so valuable, especially for strongman, because you never really know like the exact situation you're going to need that strength in. And a lot of the time you're already hitting, if you're already doing regular like concentric, eccentric work on other exercises, it's just a nice variation to throw in some dead stop work. It's hard. And it transfers to like everything. Like James said, if you can do like press it off a dead stop like that, you're definitely going to be able to do it with the eccentric first.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that covers everything to do with triceps, but I mean, we still got more to talk about. You know what I was watching on YouTube yesterday, 2 days ago? It was Brian Shaw's full day of eating 10,000 calories. And for his dessert, so have you've heard of that Ninja Creamy, that thing that makes ice cream basically at home that everyone's like raving about?
I haven't heard of that,
dude. Okay, we got to get one, Mona. I know, but Colm, now you need to look this thing up, because you will get one for sure, because you're always bulking.
I think we watch a YouTube video, or even more than one, every single night, and every single night James will show me, look at this new recipe. I think we have about 20 recipes already ready to try with this thing.
And we don't even have a Ninja Creamy yet.
Yes. So I definitely think that's something. And yeah, if a person can't get their protein in, like this is probably the best way to get there.
Because you can make protein ice creams with it, right? So you know what
look this up.
Yeah. So you know what he's doing?
Cream.
He's eating into, I think it's the Shaw Classic deadlift competition, right? So he's bulking basically 10,000 calories. So you know what his dessert was? It was frozen mass gainer. So 2 pots of it. So it was a full serving total. So I think it was like 700 calories. Made that into ice cream. And then he dipped cheesecake into it. And that was his dessert. And I was like, "Holy, like that is another level."
Yeah, I'll watch that video. I've watched all of the other ones. I haven't seen that latest one.
Yeah, it's just
Um,
him eating a stupid amount of food. I mean,
yeah,
10,000 guys eating into a competition that is his food bill must be. I mean, he's got a trifecta sponsor now, so his food bill's probably cut completely in half.
yeah. What like for people listening as well, you have to understand Brian Shaw. Like if you see him in person, you like it's one thing to see him on videos and everything. When you see him in person, though, you realize like he's not, say, like a basketball player or whatever, tend to be quite lanky.
Hmm.
Brian is just like a normal person, just like expanded. He's like his proportions are like that of a normal person, just big.
But a
So
giant.
he's a legit giant. So to don't think you have to go eat like 10,000 calories. Um, but he is a big man and he's got a lot of muscle on him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, after that video, Mona made us go buy cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory yesterday. So
Yeah.
I was eating some of that before this podcast, obviously, in lieu of Brian Shaw. But I don't know if there's anything else happening in the strongman world, Cole. Currently, it's a little quiet, I think, as World's Strongest Man's died down.
Yeah, there's not much at the moment. There like everyone's posting up their training videos. There should be something I forget off the top of my head, but there'll be some Giants lives coming up soon. And once they start, excuse me, once they start, they're quite frequent to be honest. Um, which is something I quite like as a fan. Having like the concept of having a season where they do all these
Mm.
competitions back to back, I quite like. Can be a bit of a pain to train for, but I like it. And to me, like as a fan again, who I still consider the goat of strongman, greatest of all time, Zydrunas Savickas. He used to compete. I think, like on average, he would have competed at least 12 times a year, but there was a year he did 14 competitions in a year, so he's doing more than one a month. Um, and
Damn.
he won like almost all of them, which to me, like there's the argument with PEDs and all that sort of thing, and guys will choose competitions to peak for, do like a huge drug cycle, peak for this, and then they walk around not so strong. Like to me, like what I just as a fan or even as someone who trains, what I appreciate is the ability to be strong all the time. I know
Hmm.
sports performance wise it's not always possible, but I just like that aspect. And like Zadrunas to me personifies that with how he was able to like compete year round, which just tells me he's not relying on ridiculous amounts of PEDs as some of the other guys might have to do.
Mm.
Um, he's got this consistent level of strength, and then throughout that, he was also setting log press world records at multiple of these comps. So he was, at a high level of strength across a long period of time. Which having a season of strongman kind of lets you see that. Probably not like the casual viewer at Christmas time in the UK probably doesn't care about that. They just want to watch them all together. But I find it quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's solid. I mean, but once the Giants live starts, you have to keep us updated with what's going on there and any of the people to look out for. Because wait, do they stream the Giants live, or is that like World's Strongest Man where they don't stream it?
they do stream it, but it's paid.
Ah,
And unfortunately, I've heard others have issues with them, so I haven't streamed one in a while. But some of them are pretty good. Like you can also sign up and then watch them back. But the
yeah.
last time I stayed up for one, it was some weird hour for me, and it just stuffed up. So I
Is
wasn't happy.
is it their own platform, or they go through someone else?
Yeah,
Okay,
well, I don't know if they've built it from scratch, but they run
okay, that's probably half the issue then.
it. Yeah,
No, I think that concludes today's episode. So remember, down in the description, there's the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground. You get access to every single training program. That includes all the strongman programs by Colm, all the weightlifting programs by Mona, then all the Lift Big, Eat Big, strength and size programs. ones to get you huge triceps are in there too. If you're after big triceps, Pump Dragon is your program that is in there. It's literally, I think it's 24 weeks of training because it's 3 8-week blocks. And they all include arm days. So that is the perfect program that you need to run if you're after big triceps. But thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next week.